Leadership is Language. Written by David Marquet. Summarized by GoldReaders.com. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Introduction. Enhance your leadership skills and effectiveness by transforming your communication approach. Why are numerous airplane accidents ultimately attributed to inadequate communication between pilots and co-pilots? You might not be aware, but the language commonly used in today's workplaces is a remnant of the industrial age. Its purpose is to maximize efficiency, reinforce hierarchical structures, and promote conformity. However, the world has undergone significant changes in the past century. Nowadays, adaptability, teamwork, and diversity are crucial for a company's success. So why do we still adhere to outdated practices developed for a different era? In these summarized insights, you will discover how to recognize obsolete communication patterns that you may still employ and develop new ones that are better suited for today's workplace. In these summary, you will learn the reasons why traditional leadership language is completely outdated. Effective techniques for fostering a range of perspectives. How leaders who are willing to be vulnerable can actually save lives. Chapter 1. The divide between thinkers and doers. The conventional management approach divides people into two distinct categories: decision makers and implementers. Imagine yourself at work, nearing the end of the day and contemplating how to spend your evening. Perhaps you have plans to meet friends at a nearby bar, or maybe you feel the need to go to the gym for a workout. On the other hand, you might be exhausted and prefer to go home and rest. Taking a moment to evaluate each option, you carefully consider before ultimately making a final choice. Then, you pack your bag, leave the office, and put your decision into action. In this scenario, you have engaged in two fundamental modes of human activity, thinking and doing. In your personal life, you effortlessly transition between these modes multiple times a day, as do most individuals. However, in the realm of work, most of us are classified as either thinkers or doers. This categorization stems from the prevalent organizational models established during the industrial age. Over time, various descriptors and signals have emerged to define these groups: leaders and followers, salaried and hourly workers, white-collar and blue-collar employees. The primary and somewhat arbitrary distinction lies in assigning decision-making responsibilities to one group and execution tasks to the other. This approach is exemplified in Frederick Winslow Taylor's 1911 book, The Principles of Scientific Management. In this book, Taylor outlines the most efficient methods for steel mill workers to perform a range of tasks. For instance, he determined that workers were most productive when shoveling precisely 21 pounds of material, not 20 or 22 pounds. Taylor's aim was to minimize variability in order to enhance efficiency, a concept that made sense in traditional manufacturing industries that relied on standardization. Even today, many companies find it beneficial to reduce variability. For instance, car manufacturers need to produce millions of identical parts in rapid succession, while McDonald's aims to deliver consistent burgers to satisfy their customers. However, humans are not like car parts or burgers. We are inherently variable. We cannot be neatly divided into distinct categories of doers and thinkers. Therefore, Taylor's principles of scientific management require a re-evaluation and updating to acknowledge and accommodate the unique nature of human beings. Chapter 2. Outdated Language of Leadership. The language used in the old style of leadership is characterized by determinism and binary thinking, focusing solely on taking action rather than engaging in critical thinking. On October 1, 2015, a tragic event unfolded in the Bahamas when the container ship El Faro got caught in a hurricane and was lost at sea, resulting in the loss of all 33 crew members. It would be convenient to assign blame to the captain for not choosing an alternative route to avoid the storm, or to the first mate for not warning the captain about changing weather conditions, or even to the bridge team for not expressing their concerns to the first mate regarding the increasingly severe waves. However, according to the author, the underlying issue was the language used. Both on board the El Faro and within the company that owned it, the language employed for conducting operations was outdated, stemming from an old-fashioned leadership approach, which, in this case, had fatal consequences. Let's examine some of the statements made by the captain to the crew in the days leading up to the tragedy. He reassured them by saying, "It should be fine, and we are gonna be fine." He also ridiculed less experienced sailors who were inclined to alter the course due to every weather pattern they encountered. He firmly stated, "No, no, no. We're not gonna turn around." The captain likely intended to motivate and inspire confidence in his crew. However, his words made it difficult for lower-ranking individuals to voice their concerns. The author argues that the captain's language, conveying invulnerability and invincibility, is a remnant of the industrial age, when leaders had to ensure compliance from their followers. This language is focused on achieving goals and reducing variability, preempting challenges. Even when questions are asked, they tend to be binary and deterministic, such as "Are you sure?" instead of "How sure are you?" Binary questions only allow for two possible responses, yes or no. On the other hand, open-ended questions like "How sure are you?" encourage thinking, promote reflection, and slow down the decision-making process. Imagine if the captain of El Faro had employed a different approach. Instead of declaring, "We're not gonna turn around," what if he had invited everyone to participate in the decision-making process? What if he had asked the entire team about their confidence in the chosen route? This alternative approach might have slowed things down, but it could have potentially saved El Faro and everyone on board. Chapter 3: Modern Challenges, Modern Leadership Model. The traditional method of leadership is no longer effective for modern companies. Let's consider another tragic incident at sea. In April 2010, the Deepwater Horizon oil rig experienced a critical rise in pressure, as indicated by the gauges on the drilling riser. Although the bridge operators initiated the closure of the temporary seals to halt drilling, none of them activated the emergency disconnect switch, which could have prevented a blowout. After 9 minutes, the rig exploded into flames, resulting in the loss of 11 lives and the discharge of 5 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Why didn't anyone activate the switch? An investigation later revealed that the bridge operators were waiting for permission from a manager. Consider this: for 9 whole minutes, highly flammable hydrocarbons were gushing from the wellhead, while the operators on the bridge hesitated to take action without authorization. How is it possible that the fear of pushing a button without permission surpassed the fear of perishing in a massive explosion? The crucial message here is that the outdated approach to leadership is no longer effective for modern companies. In the traditional way of conducting business, as we have observed, one group of workers made decisions while another group executed them. Control and adherence to rules were essential for smooth processes, and leaders had to ensure compliance. This approach may have been reasonable during the industrial age, which prioritized standardization and efficiency. However, it doesn't always align with the present circumstances. That's because adaptability is now just as important as efficiency. Today, the world moves at a much faster pace, even in conventional industries. Let's take the example of car manufacturing. The internal combustion engine, which powers cars, was invented in 1859, almost a century after the steam engine. It took another 27 years for the first car to be built, and another 22 years after that for Ford to introduce the Model T, the first affordable automobile for the middle class. Nowadays, innovation can occur within months, not centuries. Conditions change rapidly, and companies must be able to adjust accordingly. Recall the case of El Faro. The captain had numerous opportunities to change course, but the leadership style they adhered to didn't allow for reassessment or encourage other team members to voice their concerns. As a result, everyone operated within a narrow scope of activity that prevented them from adapting to changing conditions. Chapter 4. The Collective Wisdom of Leadership. To thrive, organizations require both active contributors and decision-makers. This concept is illustrated by Francis Galton's observation at a fair in 1906. At the fair, participants were asked to guess the weight of an ox, and Galton discovered that the collective average of the guesses was more accurate than most individual guesses. Essentially, the group's knowledge surpassed that of any single individual. This story emphasizes the importance of involving all team members in the decision-making process for organizational success. As Taylor's study on steel mills demonstrated, tasks that involve physical work benefit from minimized variability. Following a set sequence of steps is crucial for jobs like operating a submarine. On the other hand, thinking work thrives on variability. Brainstorming, for instance, benefits from the generation of numerous ideas, and decision-making benefits from having multiple options. Therefore, effective leaders reject the traditional separation between decision-makers and doers and involve all team members in the decision-making process. This approach acknowledges Galton's insight that collective wisdom is generally superior to individual wisdom. Furthermore, this inclusive approach not only encourages variability but also enhances people's motivation. Numerous studies have shown that when individuals have autonomy over their work, they experience greater happiness and are less susceptible to burnout. In fact, a study conducted by Harvard Business School identified freedom in deciding what to do or how to accomplish the task as the primary driver of innovation in organizations. A wise leader understands that involving all team members in thinking work is the most effective way to achieve results and even excel at tasks like guessing the weight of an ox. In the following discussion, we will explore some techniques to implement this inclusive approach. Chapter 5. The Language of Inclusive Leadership. Effective leaders employ a language that fosters an environment where individuals feel encouraged to express their thoughts, contribute their ideas, and actively participate. In the given scenario, a CEO is having lunch with a friend during a crucial day when his company is conducting a trial for a new product. The CEO receives a call from the project lead, who informs him about the unfavorable situation at the trial site. After a brief conversation, the CEO concludes the call with a directive: "Let me know if you need me to come over." However, the CEO's lunch companion, who happens to be the author of the book Leadership is Language, is concerned about this interaction. He advises the CEO to call back the project lead and rephrase his statement. Following this advice, the CEO contacts the project lead again and asks her, on a scale of 0 to 5, how helpful would it be if I came to the site? The response indicates a rating of 5, prompting the CEO to express his gratitude to his friend and immediately head to the trial site. Initially, when the CEO used the phrase "tell me if you need me," he unknowingly adhered to an outdated leadership approach where he issues commands and expects compliance from his employees. This statement also places the burden on the project lead to admit that she requires assistance and to demand that her boss leaves his lunch. Such a situation can be challenging for someone to navigate. By rephrasing his statement, the CEO completely transformed the dynamic. His question, "How helpful would it be if I came over?" sought information and served as a request. This open-ended and non-binary question demonstrated his genuine interest in hearing the thoughts of the project lead. Through this rephrasing, he created a safe environment for her to provide the necessary information, which ultimately contributed to the success of the product tria. Psychological safety plays a vital role in the success of an organization. As exemplified in this scenario, it is achieved by actively encouraging diverse perspectives and soliciting input. Leaders can employ various techniques to accomplish this. They can consciously speak less, allowing others to contribute more. They can acknowledge when they lack knowledge, which encourages others to do the same. Furthermore, leaders can display vulnerability, which fosters an environment where individuals feel comfortable speaking up without fear. Consider the potential outcomes if the operators of Deepwater Horizon had felt secure enough to follow their common sense and take action, or if the bridge crew of El Faro had felt confident enough to raise concerns about the weather conditions. Chapter 6. Control the Clock Leadership Approach. A successful leader rejects the conventional mindset of strictly adhering to schedules and instead adopts an approach where they have control over time management. Let's envision an alternative scenario where the El Faro crew felt psychologically secure enough to question the captain's choices. In this situation, the captain took the opportunity to have a pre-departure meeting with the first mate. He expressed his enthusiasm for her being part of the team and acknowledged that their diverse backgrounds would bring different perspectives. He encouraged her to share her opinions and assured her that he would listen attentively. Over the next 2 days, the captain organized multiple meetings involving the entire crew at crucial moments to discuss the possibility of changing routes. He used language that encouraged active participation and employed various techniques to involve everyone in the decision-making process. Instead of blindly sticking to the originally chosen route, he allowed time for reflection and reconsideration by calling for breaks. In essence, he implemented what the author refers to as controlling the clock. The main idea is that a successful leader rejects the traditional approach of strictly following schedules and embraces the approach of managing time effectively. This involves switching between periods of reflection and action, even if it means slowing down or questioning decisions that have already been made. This approach is starkly different from the old mindset of blindly adhering to schedules at all costs, especially in a factory setting where any period without production is deemed wasteful. That's why the language used in the old approach is aimed at keeping teams constantly in action. The captain of El Faro exemplified this by telling his crew, "We'll just have to tough this one out. You can't run every single weather pattern." In other words, once a decision is made, they would continue regardless of the circumstances. It's no wonder the crew didn't feel comfortable expressing their concerns. Who would want to be seen as someone who avoids challenges? Good leaders not only allow for pauses, but actively encourage them, plan for them, and acknowledge their significance. Instead of stating, "We must reach land by Friday," they might say, "I'm slightly worried about the storm. We'll set sail, but we'll have a team meeting at noon to reassess our decision." By doing so, they make it easier for their teams to adapt to changing circumstances, and in some cases, they may even save lives. Chapter 7. Collaborative Decision-Making Model. Effective leaders adopt a collaborative approach to decision-making that values and embraces diversity and individual differences. In a leadership seminar attended by executives of a large international company, the author demonstrates this concept by assigning small groups a task. Each group is given 90 seconds to provide an educated guess about the outcome of an experiment described by the author. In every group, a senior executive typically presents the initial guess, followed by others suggesting slightly higher or lower estimates. The group then engages in a discussion to reach a consensus. Surprisingly, regardless of how accurate or inaccurate the initial guess was, the final estimate of each group tends to converge around that initial guess. In the past, leadership relied on a coercive style where people were compelled to comply with decisions in which they had no involvement. Nowadays, many leaders recognize the advantages of involving everyone in decision-making processes, but often lack the necessary skills to implement such an approach. Transitioning from a coercive leadership style to a more collaborative one requires leaders to actively change their language and approach. For instance, the executives at the leadership seminar could have privately written down their individual guesses before engaging in a group discussion, which would have resulted in a wider range of initial estimates. This approach would have also allowed quieter group members to express their ideas and safeguarded against the influence of the senior executive's opinion. Another technique to encourage diversity is to ask insightful questions that genuinely seek another person's perspective. By asking someone, "What am I missing?" instead of "Does that make sense?" the response is likely to be different and more diverse. Similarly, actively inviting dissent rather than subtly promoting consensus can yield valuable insights. At the author's company, meetings start with participants randomly picking cards from a deck, where 80% are black and 20% are red. If someone picks a red card, they are encouraged to voice their dissent, with the card providing a sense of psychological safety to do so. The result of implementing these strategies, as explained further in the following section, is not only a wider range of ideas but also a more energized and engaged team. Chapter 8: Motivational Leadership. Effective leadership involves motivating people to be committed to taking action rather than merely complying with directives. It's similar to the situation where you're trying to resist eating sugar. If you constantly tell yourself, "I can't eat sugar," it implies an external force preventing you from doing so. However, if you tell yourself, "I don't eat sugar," the power comes from within you. This intrinsic motivation is more influential in driving behavior compared to simply complying with external rules. The main idea here is that effective leadership inspires commitment, which leads to increased energy, creativity, and initiative. One way to foster commitment is by emphasizing a learning mindset rather than just a task-oriented mindset. Instead of focusing on proving oneself or the success of a product, individuals are more effective when they approach their work with a mindset of improvement. Humans are naturally curious, and our brains respond positively to exploration and discovery. This activates our seeking system, making us more enthusiastic and effective in our work because we're excited about what we might learn. Additionally, we handle failures and setbacks more easily since they are seen as part of the learning process. Another strategy to encourage commitment is to break work into manageable chunks. When people know there are planned pauses for reflection and re-evaluation, they are more willing to fully engage in their work. Breaking work into chunks also helps guard against escalating commitment, where initial decisions become reinforced and difficult to change. To illustrate the benefits of breaking work into chunks, consider the example of the El Faro crew. If they had divided their journey into smaller segments of decision-making and execution, they could have periodically re-evaluated their plans on board. Instead of the captain making a single decision at the beginning of the journey and sticking to it, the crew would have had opportunities to reassess their situation and make adjustments along the way. Chapter 9: Defined Milestones. In the context of the Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway incident at the 2017 Academy Awards, the message conveyed is that successful leaders prioritize the accomplishment of specific objectives instead of persisting in work indefinitely. During that event, when Beatty opened the envelope containing the winner's name, he discovered a card that indicated Emma Stone, La La Land for actress in a leading role, rather than the correct card for Best Picture. However, Beatty and Dunaway didn't address the mistake right away due to an outdated mindset that emphasized continuous progress and avoiding delays at all costs. The underlying idea is that leaders who achieve success are those who focus on completing well-defined goals instead of perpetuating work endlessly. This concept contrasts with the practices of the industrial age, where leaders aimed to maximize production time and discouraged interruptions or reflection. In this mindset, workers were expected to act without thinking, solely focused on maintaining production efficiency. Beattie and Dunaway exemplified this mindset on stage, as they hesitated but ultimately chose to continue without questioning the discrepancy. The pressure of time and the fear of interrupting the proceedings led them to announce the incorrect winner, causing confusion and a subsequent correction minutes later. The alternative scenario suggested is that successful leaders should feel empowered to pause, assess, and verify information when needed, even if it means temporarily halting the show. By embracing this approach, leaders can discard the outdated mindset of continuous work and instead embrace a framework that acknowledges the importance of reflective pauses and the completion of discrete steps within projects. Research has shown that acknowledging and celebrating milestones improves workplace performance and allows for re-evaluation and reflection. Had Beattie and Dunaway been able to adopt this perspective, it's possible that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences could have avoided the significant blunder that occurred during the award announcement. Chapter 10: Leading with a Growth Mindset. Effective leaders inspire individuals to continuously learn, develop, and enhance themselves. Take the example of the Disney movie Frozen, which initially faced failure during a test screening. Rather than dwelling on the shortcomings, the producer adopted a different approach. He encouraged his team to envision their aspirations and think freely about what they wanted to achieve. This shift in focus empowered team members to generate innovative and unconventional ideas without worrying about the constraints of the production schedule. The idea of learning and improvement is not a new concept. In the past, leaders were solely responsible for analyzing processes and determining improvements in industrial-age companies. However, in today's collaborative world, it is crucial for everyone on the team to assess their own performance. To facilitate this, effective leaders must foster psychologically safe environments where individuals feel comfortable taking risks and are not afraid of being seen as incompetent or ignorant. By creating such cultures, leaders empower their team members to contribute to the betterment of their work. The success of Frozen demonstrates that when individuals are given the opportunity to learn, take ownership, and participate in decision-making regarding their work, they can accomplish extraordinary things. Conclusion: if you hold a leadership position, it's likely that the way you communicate is influenced by the industrial age, when people were categorized strictly as decision-makers or doers, leaders or followers, and those who made decisions and those who executed them. However, successful organizations today reject this division and involve all team members in both the thinking and doing aspects of work. To achieve this, leaders must completely reconsider the language they use to communicate. Practical advice: pose open-ended questions. Instead of asking your team to approve a decision you have already made when transitioning from one phase of a project to the next, avoid using questions like, "Is everyone okay with this?" or "Does this look fine to you?" Instead, ask questions such as, "How can we improve this?" or on a scale of 1 to 5, "How confident are you in moving forward?"